Good evening. Good evening, all. Especially good evening, Subodh Kerkar. They're practicing art on different media, land art, huge installations. Subodh Kerkar, he lives and works in Goa. Welcome, Subodh Kerkar, for our show by Amuseum, sharing thoughts. This is very interesting to note that, especially for me, that I was also a practicing medical doctor. So Subodh Kerkar actually was practicing medical professional, but he dropped his profession to pursue art of the profession and seriously taking and practicing since 30 years. His works are basically interacting mainly with the social, political, and religious issues. His works mainly include subjects from the oceans and the materials from seashore and all these things. Maybe artists who are actually participating here might have seen his work. He's also the founder, director of the famous Museum of Goa. I have visited the museum and met him a couple of times. He was also an active participant and speaker for the program about the Constitution of India that was held, I think, 3 years back. So he was very much actively participating in the social and political level, as well as his works were also integrated with other the files of political and social issues. That's a major thing. I found it very much interesting. Usually, many people keep their political things silent and work in a different way. So expressions are different, their political ideologies are different. In Subodh Kerkar, we can see both mergers, and he's using both his voice, his writing, his speeches, and his also his artwork and life is always connected with a simple ideology. So welcome, Subodh Kerkar, as well as all the attendees here and people watching in Facebook. I invite Subodh Kerkar to present his work and talk about for the first, and then we go for the interaction session. Thank you and welcome, Subodh Kerkar.
Thank you, Ajit. And I must say it's very, very nice to be talking to my friends in Kerala. Thank you for inviting me on this very important platform. I like Kerala for many, many reasons. It's very much like Goa. Goa and Kerala, we share a huge connection. I think lots of Goans, when they escaped the Inquisition during the Portuguese rule, escaped to Kerala and they set up their homes in Kerala. So we have lots of Goans in Kerala. We had a lot of trade relationship. When Goa became liberated in 1961, we did not have a single college, and we did not have engineers and teachers. We didn't have graduates. So most of the engineers and teachers who were appointed in Goa in 1961 were from Kerala, and many of them have retired as directors of many institutions, including PWD and the education department and many things. So we have this great connection. And another most important thing is, of course, Goa is also a place for arts. And we are very, very grateful to Kerala that Kerala started Kochi Museris Biennale. I think if I have to talk about one thing, which is the best thing which has happened to Indian contemporary art, that is the Kochi Museris Biennale. And we are really very, very thankful to Bose Krishnamachari, the whole team and the people of Kerala, and especially the politicians of Kerala, because if it was not for M.A. Baby, it would not have happened. So we are very, very happy that this happened. And another reason why I like Kerala very much is about our like for fish and our dislike for the BJP. Because I think it is very important that I think Kerala has taken a liberal view in politics, not allowed the right wing, the RSS, to succeed. And why am I talking about this today at this art talk? It's art talk. But I basically believe that if you are a right-wing person, if you belong to any religious fanatic organization, whether it is RSS or any other Muslim organization or a Christian fanatic organization, you cannot be an artist. You will always be a mediocre artist, because art is a function of liberal thought. Art is not a function of any kind of fanaticism, and fanaticisms always produce mediocres. So with this background, let me start with a small slide presentation to you. I will start with my early days and how I moved from being a landscape artist to what I am today, a conceptual artist. Yeah. Well, I always begin any talk which I do with some pictures of my father. My father passed away almost 20 years ago, and when he passed away, I had about 500 photographs of my father, which I installed on the riverside, on the seaside, on the hillside, because from the age of 6 to 16, my father was my only teacher. Because my father spent 2-3 hours with me every day. I went to a small village school, and it was a Marathi medium school. But in spite of that, when I went to English medium school in 9th and 10th standard, I managed to stand 7th in the whole board, in the SSC board. And that was only possible because my father actually wrote a book to teach me English, especially for me. So I'm one of the luckiest childs where a father writes a book to teach his son English. And it is called Subodh Kerkar. So my father actually was an artist, but he had also done his master's in English literature. He was a school teacher, and he used to paint in his spare time. Those days, the teachers were paid very badly, and he used to paint in his spare time. And that is how we started learning to paint. And I was a very good student, as I told you, but I never ever thought that I will become an artist because art was always a hobby. I'm going to start with a few of the pictures of my father. So this is the kind of work my father did. It was kind of a depiction of Goa of his childhood. I would not call him a great artist, but definitely his works are a very important documentation of Goa of his childhood. And I don't think there is any other artist in Goa who has done a documentation in the artistic way of Goa of that time. This is Goa of 40s and 50s. These are tribal women of Goa. These are all paintings of my father. And when we were little children, where he would always ask us to squeeze some paint on his palette, and later on our job was to wash his brushes. So I understood cerulean blue and cobalt blue and ultramarine blue when I was just 5 years old. So these are my father's works. Sorry, I'm just recovering from COVID, but that doesn't matter. So my father taught me all this, but my father could never go beyond Gauguin. Like his understanding of art was perhaps up to Gauguin. After Gauguin, whatever happened in the world of art, he could not appreciate. So I was also brought up thinking that this is art and all the rest, what is happening, like works of Picasso and all this is nonsense, because that's what my father had taught me when I was a little boy. And so I started doing watercolor landscapes. These are my works, which I started when I was just, hardly 9 years old. Because I learned the watercolor technique very well. So I could do on-the-spot watercolor. I would sit there with the paper in front of some houses. My father taught me how to paint shade and light. So this is one of my early works, which is a transparent watercolor work. And this I could do within some 20 minutes. So by the time I was about 10, 15 years old, I had become fairly proficient in doing classical English watercolors. Because my father's teacher was S.L. Haldankar. Haldankar at that time was one of the major artists in Mumbai. And he has done portraits of many people, including the painting, which is there in the Mysore Museum, which is of Lady with a Lamb. That's a watercolor. So my father learned watercolor from Mr. Haldankar, and I learned watercolor from my father. And when I was able to do this kind of work, I thought I was an artist. And this I did when I was a medical student. And this is a watercolor I did in Portugal. This is also in Portugal in a place called Setúbal. And I thought I had become an artist already because I knew only this. I didn't know anything else. And then, I was a very successful doctor. I had a hospital of my own, and I came from a poor family, but after I started my hospital, my financial situation, everything became all right. But then after about 7 years of practicing medicine, I realized that there is something wrong. It was too much of a routine for my taste. I did not dislike it because I mean, it's a very noble profession, and the patients are so grateful to you. I must tell you that every year I got at least about 10 bottles of Black Label from patients' relatives, because all the fathers, the parents of children who are working in the Gulf would I would look after the parents as a doctor. And when they came every year or every 2 years, they will bring me a bottle of very good scotch. So that does not happen as an artist. If you ask me what you are missing, I think I'm missing that part. Because now as an artist, people don't come with Black Label whiskeys as gifts to you. But anyway, so I started doing this, and then suddenly, I realized that this is too routine. And about 80% of my patients by this time were British tourists, because tourism had suddenly come up in Kalangut, where I started my practice. And 80% of the patients were tourists, British tourists, and they were suffering only from loose motions. So the idea of spending my lifetime treating British loose motions was not very palatable. I said, India has taken enough shit from the British. I don't want to take any more. So I gave up my medicine and I started art. But I must tell you, the same feeling I had, which came when I was practicing as a doctor, came when I started doing these watercolor landscapes for about 2 years. For 2 years, I was doing landscapes. I was doing some figurative work. These are some of the early works of windows of Goan houses. This, I realized, was a technique. This is also routine, because for me, this was a skill, and I was so skillful that I could do this very quickly. And then I had the same kind of a problem. I said, okay, this is not art. Well, this is good, but this is not good enough for me because this is not challenging enough. And during this time, I had an opportunity to go to Germany to show some of these works in Germany. And I stayed for a while, and I was able to travel to Europe and visit modern art museum, including Tate Modern in London. And when I looked at these modern art museums in Europe, many of the things I didn't understand, frankly, because I didn't know what this is about. And my father had taught me that all this is nonsense, but I decided I will not agree with my father. Let me find out for myself. And so my journey began. And if I have to name one, I mean, somebody as my teacher in learning contemporary art, I think the museums, the contemporary museums of the world became my teachers. Because you cannot become an artist from a doctor overnight. You cannot become a doctor from a lawyer overnight. And you can't become a lawyer from an architect overnight. So you need to study. And I had to study. And I must tell you, I took a long time to study. So it took me many years to understand ABCD of art. What I knew at that time was just skill. Because if you know grammar, you don't become a writer. To become a writer, you have to have something to say. So I was in the similar situation that I knew grammar, I knew the skill of painting, but I did not know basically art as such. And so these are my early works. These are, I'm talking about watercolors, landscapes of Goan houses because I loved that. But I also did a lot of works with the fishermen and the fisherwomen. I will come to that. Now, before I go to the other part, now I must tell you, how do I deal with architecture today? I showed you how I dealt with architecture in the past, did watercolor landscapes of architecture, Goan houses. Even today, after 30 years of art, I still engage with the subject of Goan architecture, but I do it completely differently. Now, look at this work here. Now, there are lots of old Goan houses which are crumbling. And these are Indo-Portuguese houses. And there's a custom in Goa that before Christmas, everybody paints the house from outside. And they use chuna. Chuna is a lime. And it was an unwritten rule that you paint the house only in either ochre, and natural color, natural pigments are added to chuna, lime. Either it's ochre, indigo for blue, and then red oxide. So these are the colors which you use for the houses: indigo, red oxide, which is for red, or ochre. And the chapel or the church in the village has to be white. Sometimes some houses are also painted white. So this was the rule. And before the Christmas, which is called Natal in the Portuguese language and also in Konkani language, everybody paints the house from outside. So when I looked at this particular house, I found that this house had about 150 layers of paint. That is because the house was about 200 years old. And at least 150 layers of paints were given on this. And I examined the walls and I realized that the colors had changed over every 30, 40 years. Once it was a blue house, then it became red oxide, then it became a white house, and then ultimately it became an ochre house. So what I did was I took some sharp instruments. I cut the walls of this house because this is a crumbling house anyway. So I just went there and picked up the slabs of the walls, mounted them on plywood, and then started carving on it. So this is the work which I did, which is called 150 Natal celebrations. So this is a very interesting example, especially for those who are not connected with contemporary art, to tell you how an artist evolves from doing watercolor landscapes of the houses to creating this kind of a work. See here, there is a garrafão. Garrafão is a wine bottle and wine, and then all this is carved out and the inner colors have come out. So you can see here very clearly what are the different colors this house had. Now I will come to, during this time, I was also doing figurative work. So these are my works, which are of the fishermen. You know, since I was a doctor and I had a hospital right on the beach, the fishermen were my patients and I started painting them. So these are my early portraits of the fishermen. So I would paint fishermen mending nets, fishermen on the boat. This was the oldest fisherman in Kalangut. His name was Bastão. And Bastão was, I think, about 90 years old. And he would go and sit on the beach every morning. He was very frail and weak, but he still sat on the beach and watched the ocean. And I always wondered, what is he thinking? He must be remembering all the fishing expeditions he has had, and he would smoke his churut. So I painted him. So this is Bastão. This is another head of a fisherman. I did also many kind of a stylized work connected with fishermen. These were my early works way back in 90s, 80s and 90s. Now, in this lecture, I'm essentially trying to tell you, and this I'm basically giving this lecture thinking that my audience is common people. I'm using very simple language, which may not be very, very suitable for people who are already who are artists. But this is a trajectory which definitely will help a common person to connect with contemporary art. So these are my early works. This work was actually published on the cover page of Reader Digest magazine that time. These are some works again. I started doing some kind of fantasies with fishermen. Now, today, I do work with fishermen. It is completely different work. Today, I don't do portraits of fishermen. What I do today is I work with fishermen and create a performance. So this is my work, which I created with 100 fishermen. So the subject remains the same, the fishermen of Kalangut. But then here, I make them, I sit in certain positions. Here, they are just praying to the ocean. So this is. So I'm again working with fishermen, but completely differently. So here it becomes a performance, but at the same time, why am I doing this? I'm trying to sort of talk about the inseparability of the life of the fisherman and the ocean, because I have seen the life of the fisherman from a very close angle. Many people ask me, you being a doctor, has it affected your art? Well, I did study anatomy, but I don't think I'm not a figurative painter anymore. So the anatomy which I learned did not really help me becoming a better artist. But what helped me was understanding the life of the fishermen who were my patients, because my hospital was right on the beach and I could connect with the fishermen very closely. And I came to know that their life is inseparable from the ocean. The ocean and the fishermen are sort of very much connected. And that connectivity, that inseparatedness of the fisherman's life and the ocean is what I try to present using these installations, which are kind of performances. So initially I used to do only still photographs of these works, but then something very interesting happened. The great filmmaker Bharat Bala, who works very much with A.R. Rahman, he happened to come to Goa at the airport and he saw some of the photographs of my works. And he told his friend, whoever has done this, I'm going to do a film about him. And then he came to meet me. And then he came with his crew and he created a small film about my work. And that is why I was introduced to the video as a medium for recording my works. So I'm going to show you some more. Here, the fishermen become a keel of a boat. You know, the keel is when you construct a boat, you have to have a spine. And so here the fishermen become the spine of the boat. Here the fishermen become the boat itself. And inside you see some kind of a texture. Those are mussel shells which I have planted. So here the fishermen become the fish, the bone of the fish. So that is basically the inseparability. Here they are doing some kind of an oceanic ritual. These are some imaginary rituals which I have devised. They are waiting for someone there, protecting their ocean. Now this is a video, which is a few minutes video, which is actually, I would say, the zest of my work, which I have done with the fishermen in the video form. And in this video, I have you'll be seeing people walking along the waves. Now, why do I do this? Why am I showing people walking along the waves almost in rhyme, in rhythm with the waves? That's because, you know, if you consider the culture of any coastal town, a coastal city, as a sculpture, the culture of Kerala or culture of Goa or culture of the Karnataka coast as a sculpture, who is the sculptor? So the sculptor is the ocean. The ocean has carved out cultures, especially of the coastal areas of the world, because the ocean has brought people, ocean has brought ideas, ocean has brought religions, ocean has brought things, food items and many other items, and there has been an exchange which is happening through the ocean. Ocean, I would say, is a medium of intercontinental cultural exchange. It is a very paradoxical thing. The continental shift happened, and it is the ocean which separated the continents millions of years ago. The oceans separated the continents, but paradoxically, it was also the oceans which united the continents. The first exchange of ideas between the people happened through the ocean. The Arabs have been coming to the coast of Muziris and the coast of Lothal in Kerala for thousands of years. We have in the Harappan civilization, 2500 BC, the Arab ships came to Lothal in Gujarat. And so we have had a very close connection through the ocean, and the ocean is a medium of intercontinental cultural diffusions. Ocean is a highway of culture. And these are all the ideas which I present using what you're about to see. Hope you enjoyed it. I think now I'm going to, I have done hundreds of thousands of works. So I decided I will only give a presentation of 3 sets of work. So I started with the watercolor landscapes, and then I told you how I moved to presenting the idea of architecture and the history of architecture in a conceptual way. I talked about how I did portraits of the fishermen, and then I am now presenting them in a completely different way in the form of a performance. Now I come to my paintings, which I did with the fishing boats. I was always connected with the fishing boats. I did a lot of seascapes, and I used to love the textures on the surface of the fishing boats. Even when I come to Kerala, I love to watch the textures. The boats are different everywhere. Every 50 kilometers, the design of the boats changes along the coast of India. And I love to watch these boats. I would like to watch the way the pieces of wood are tied together using coir, the textures formed by the ocean. So these are some of my works which I did connected with the fishing canoes, essentially highlighting the textures on the boats and the essential forms of the fishing boats. This was one of my early works when I had an exhibition at the Jahangir Art Gallery, when even the frame, there was a carving of the boats, and I created some small boats which were kept in front of the painting. It's a very, very early work. I think this must be in 90. So this is a funny painting. I don't like it, but I'm presenting it because it is funny. I was asked to create a work in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai for the 27th floor. They said the word number 27 should come somewhere in the painting. It is a very stupid idea, but some interior designer thought that this is a great idea, that we will ask artists to put number 27 each floor and painting by an artist with that number in that painting. So this is my painting on number 27th floor of Burj Khalifa in Dubai. These are my watercolors with the elliptical forms. Slowly what happened was, instead of doing watercolor of the lands of the boats, the elliptical form became an important form to me. So I started doing only forms which were elliptical. And these are just the textures I painted. Until I decided now it is time that I work with boats itself. So I abandoned all the painting. And by this time, what had happened was a lot of fiberglass boats were manufactured. And Kerala actually took the lead in this endeavor of manufacturing fiberglass boats. So the fishermen from Goa started buying fishing boats from Kerala made out of fiberglass. That's because they were lighter, they were cheaper, they consumed less kerosene, less petrol, and they did not require any maintenance. So they didn't know what to do with the old fishing boats, because the wooden boats require a lot of maintenance and they are heavy. And so I started buying them. So I must have bought many, many boats from the fishermen in Goa. And this is what I did with them. Yeah, so I have done hundreds of sculptures using old fishing boats, old fishing canoes. I have done, and I continue to do this. I continue to buy old boats because this has been an inexhaustible subject for me. Earlier, I only bought fishing boats from Goa, but now I even went to Mandvi in Gujarat and bought wood from old dhows. Because for me, when I create a sculpture using old boats, what happens? Look here. And now here, I infuse a lot of history into these boats. Now, this particular boat here has textures which are of pepper, because pepper was a major material which was exported from the west coast of India, and Kerala was the leading state for that. If India did not have pepper, perhaps the European colonial powers would not have colonized us. So we all blame it on Kerala. They produce too much of pepper. And so pepper is what attracted the colonial powers, because pepper was very, very expensive in Europe. It was so expensive. It was the cost of pepper in Europe was 100 times. And if you're an economist, you will know that if it is 100 times price, then it is 10,000% profit. So people got 10,000% profit by taking pepper from Kerala to Europe. And that is the kind of business the colonial rulers involved themselves. So here on this boat, I have textures of pepper. So I will show you. And then there is a cross. Now, why the cross? I must tell you this story, which happened on the 20th of May in 1498. On the 20th of May, 1498, Vasco da Gama lands in Kappad near Calicut. Now, he lands in Calicut in the month of May, and now somebody has to go to the shore to find out what kind of a reception is awaiting. And there might be violence, somebody might be killed. So they decide to send someone who is dispensable. So there are lots of convicts from Lisbon who are on the ship as sailors. So one of the convicts is just sent there to check up what kind of a reception is waiting on the coast of Kappad. So this guy goes there and he meets the Tunisian people in Calicut, in Kappad, and they ask him in Spanish, what the devil bring you here? Why have you come here? And this Pablo, he replies, we came for pepper and we came for Christ. We have come for pepper and we have come for Christ. So Pepper Cross is the title of this work, where you see the texture of pepper and then the cross there. And I have done many works with the same idea of pepper cross. There is also a very beautiful book written by Keku Daruwala, which is called For Pepper and for Christ, which is about the first journey of Vasco da Gama to Calicut. And there was a sailor who actually escorted him there. So all this history gets embedded in my boats. So when I use these boats, the fishing boats, the songs of the fishermen, the stories of the fishing expeditions, all this gets embedded. So I use actually the history of the boat as a medium of sculpture. So my sculptures become mnemonic devices. Then sometimes I use copper with the old boats. I have used Chinese spoons here, the Chinese soup spoons. That's because this is a work which is talking about Zhang He. Zhang He was a Chinese admiral who came 7 times to the Indian coast, and he died in Calicut. And so this is in memory of Zhang He. You can check out the story of Zhang He, which is a fascinating story. Here, there is a whale bone which is used here. It is a real whale bone. I found it on the beach, and then the rest is wooden sculpture. I have done many murals using old fishing boats. I add tar to the fishing boats. I use oars, use fishing hooks inside my sculptures. You know, I use glass. When you put glass inside a boat, the glass, when it's lit, it appears like water. So the boat is remembering water. But then the glass is also remembering sand, because glass comes from sand. So in a way, my works are finding ancestry of materials. So memory, finding ancestry of materials, these are some of the thought processes which go in my mind when I create these works. Yeah, this work is now in Ibiza. This was shown in the Dubai Art Fair, and then the director of the art fair bought it. When I placed this work next to Burj Arab, it was actually difficult because Burj Arab is such a dominating building. But then my work actually, I was very symbiotic with that because the shapes were similar, so it worked. Here sometimes I add videos to it. So I do a lot of work with new technologies now because I'm sort of all the time abreast with new things happening. So I try to use technologies. So we have done a lot of video works using my old sculptures. So look at here. I will show a few of these slides, and then I think I will stop and we can start question answers. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can continue a little more, I think.
Okay. So this is a work which I've done again with fiberglass fishing boats. Now, I talked about the wooden fishing boats getting extinct. Now the fiberglass fishing boats are also getting older, and some of them are discarded and new ones come. So I do works like this, where there's a screen inside and you see the ocean playing inside my disk, which is a memory disk. This part I had shown, but I'm showing it again because this is sort of simple coconut leaf. And what you can do with simple coconut leaf.
I like to use different materials to create my works. I also attempt to add meanings to materials. The spine is created using stalks of palm leaves. It is perhaps the spine of some imaginary marine creature.
The spine was interesting because earlier I had to always go and look for a videographer, somebody who can fly a drone. And many a times, most of my works are sometimes spontaneous. I see an interesting sunset and I just want to rush to the beach and do something with a mirror. And so I bought a drone. I started learning flying the drone myself. So now I'm a drone pilot too. So I think it's nice that you learn new things so that you can use them for creating art. Now here, this is a very simple work. This was not very successful when I did it this time, so I'm going to repeat it. But here, one day I was there on the beach during the monsoons, and it was the sky reflecting on the sand. The water was there, the sky was there, the land was there, the wind was there, very heavy wind. What was missing was the fifth element. The fifth element, the fire. So I brought in fire, and this is what happened. These are some of the this is mingling of the oceans. I think I will stop here, speak to you a little bit more about the ocean, and then we can take question answers. I like to think of myself as an ocean artist because right from my childhood, I have always walked on the seaside with my father every day because we were lucky that we always stayed near the seaside, though my father was a simple school teacher and couldn't afford big houses or something, but we always found a house near the sea. And those days, people would rent a house to the local school teacher because we were in village schools. And so every day walking on the beach developed a very special relationship between me and my father and between me and the ocean. And I like to think of myself as an ocean artist because the ocean is both my master and my muse. The ocean is both inside my work and outside my work. And many a times, ocean is my inspiration. The ocean is my theme. The ocean is my medium, and ocean is also my canvas. And my works are heavily infused by the ocean, but at the same time, they are also infused with a lot of political and social convictions which I have, because I think an artist has to be political. If you're not political, you cannot call yourself an artist, because an artist is essentially a receptor, sensor, and transmitter of ideas in a society. And if you breathe in political air, you have to exhale political art. So I think I will stop here and will be happy to answer questions.
Hello, Subodh. As a doctor, you can see the inside life and outside life of human being. That is very interesting. That one bit I listened. As a doctor, he can see the human beings, the anatomy, and you can penetrate the inside of their life.
Yeah.
And another thing is very interesting that I hear that one thing that you connect with crows and pepper. That is very interesting.
I connect with.
Pepper with crows. Crows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's some in my mind. That is some business. Two business. One pepper business and one crows. That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw your methods. You use photographs and sculpture like Richter, Gerald Richter. He used all the methods, photographs, and there's no question. I am listening your talk. Very interesting, very informative.
Thank you. For me, I have an advantage. I'm a quack artist. I'm a proper doctor and a quack artist. Didn't go to the art school, so I can do what I like.
Yeah. There are many methods to study art.
Yeah.
You can go to art school. Otherwise, you can watch a human being. You are watching the fisherman. The people see. You are watching the sea. Sea is everything. Water is everything. You are studying that. That is more than enough.
No. Art education is very important, and it took me, because I did not go to an art college, it took me many years. Really many years. On the contrary, my son is 25 years old, and he went to the Chelsea School of Art in London, and he also had a great exposure. I think exposure is very important, and I did not have exposure till late, and it took me a long time. But I must say that Kerala artists are doing extremely well now. Not that others are not doing, but Kerala, especially when I see, there is a lot of sincerity and a thing about a Kerala artist which really impresses me very much. And I need, hopefully Kochi Museum Biennale happens, maybe not this year, maybe next year, whatever. And I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
But Subodh, one thing that one interesting thing is that college art studies, college, we have spent 5 years college. That is very important, no doubt.
Yeah.
But in college, we study college art.
That is because I basically believe that throughout the country, the art curriculum is outdated.
Yes.
So much outdated. How can you today, in 2022, have a painting department, a sculpture department, a graphic department, and a photography department? What am I? I use photographs, I use sculptures, I use all kind of things. So, and there are even some art colleges where a person from graphic department is not allowed in the sculpture department. So this is absolutely nonsense and is outdated. This is something like, 377, whatever the article was there, where LGBT community is considered criminal. The British wrote it that time, and we continued it, and we expelled it now. Even this curriculum was written by the British. It is time to expel it, because they have already expelled it in their country.
Yeah, right. And in that way, you are a very successful person. You did a lot of works, and you're amazing works. Very interesting. No questions. Very interesting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Ajit, thank you very much for.
Thank you, Pradeep.
The artist, thank you for your wonderful talk. The soul of ocean rest. Where do you think the soul of the ocean rests?
Good evening, sir.
Have a heart. Huh?
Yes, sir. Subodh sir, good evening, sir. Very nice work, your.
Thank you.
Very interesting work. And sculpture and
who
painting
is this
also.
talking?
I am from Jaipur.
Uh-huh.
I am from Jaipur.
Uh-huh.
Painting artist.
Yeah.
Yes, very interesting work, your sculpture and painting also.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Please come to Museum of Goa. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the Museum of Goa to finish this.
Okay, very
good. Yeah.
Last year in one camp, working women were camp organized in Karan Soni Madam Museum in Goa last year.
Yeah.
आप मिले उनसे जब लास्ट ईयर एक वर्क कैंप हुआ था इंटरनेशनल कैंप वर्क फॉर वुमेन इन इंडियन in Goa.
Mile. I always go to all exhibitions. Yes, Mile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice, interesting work, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me finish by just talking a little bit about Museum of Goa and my future plans. Now, I started the Museum
Okay,
of
sir.
Goa 6 years ago. Now, why did I start Museum of Goa? I think about the same reason why in Kerala they started the Kochi Museums Biennale. It is a much bigger thing. Museum of Goa is a private enterprise. It's not so big. But at the same time, I realized that in a country of 1.3 billion people, not more than 1 lakh people connect with contemporary art. And I'm not talking about laborers and fishermen and farmers. I'm talking about corporate heads and doctors and engineers and all kind of very educated people. They hardly get an opportunity to connect with contemporary art. So in a country of 1.3 billion people, hardly a lakh of people connect with contemporary art. And I thought this is something very bad. There is a kind of a cultural barrier here. And it is, most people feel that art is for the richy rich. It is not for us. And most art galleries are situated also in very five-star spaces. Kerala, things are different. Kerala is an exception. It's also exceptional. There's a different thing. But usually in most places, this is a situation. Art is for the richy rich. And common people are even scared to go and press the bell there. Bell of the art galleries, because they're in five-star areas. And so I decided it is important to democratize art. And we started the Museum of Goa. And I can tell you with great pride that in the museum, we get 100 to 300 people every day. 100 to 300 every day, paying a fee of 200 rupees. And these are the people who have never ever been to any contemporary art space in their life. And yet they enjoy the museum very much. And they are full of compliments for the museum. And that's because our curatorial policy is very simple. Our curatorial policy is Tukaram policy, meaning one has to communicate with everybody. So we only showcase work of art, which has a kind of a wow factor and which can communicate, which can talk to everybody. And so I think more and more museums of this kind and more Kochi Museums Biennales should happen in the country so that common men are exposed to art, because the function of art is, in my opinion, not about decorating walls and halls. It is about decorating the souls. It is about making us more plural. It is about making us understand that there are more than one interpretations of many things. Art teaches you plurality. It teaches you that, well, there are more interpretations possible. And I think especially Mr. Modi and company must study art so that they know that there are many interpretations possible and they don't become monologues. Art is basically about dialogues. And this is very, very important. So thank you, Ajit Kumarji, for inviting me, and hope you enjoyed this session.
Thank you
sir.
very much. But I think we have to wait for a couple of minutes to see whether there are any more people who want to interact with you.
Sure.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
This is Manju Rajak from Manipur, Northeast India. Yes, sir. Sir, a very interesting work. Like I really enjoyed actually the processes, how you was involved with the fishing community, like how they. My question is about means what is the situation of fishing community? Like they're mostly very like their livelihood and how they survive. Means they.
I think the fishing community in India is surviving very well, I must say. I mean, especially in Goa. I mean, the fishermen are very well to do, and they're hardworking, of course. I mean, hard work in fishing is huge, but they make a very good living. I must tell you, when I was a practicing doctor, I mean, most of my patients were fishing community. The fishermen and the fisherwomen were my patients. They were hardworking and they were very honest. I mean, there is not one single fisherman. Sometimes somebody would come and would not pay the hospital bill and say, okay, later on. And I would forget. But after 2 years, the fisherman or fisherwoman would come and say, okay, this is your money. So the honesty which is there is also wonderful. And they're doing well. And the fishing community, because fish is, I mean, especially with tourism, fish is expensive. And the fishing community is very well to do. I don't know about other parts, like in your part of the world. But I am so glad today that I have somebody from Kerala organizing this function, and I have somebody from Manipur listening to it. So that is what is the power of social media. And have you been to Goa from Manipur? Hello? Was there some problem with the sound?
She's muted. You can unmute and speak, Manchula.
Okay, hello.
Yeah.
No, sir, I was not there in, means I never visited Goa.
Okay, come have a look, and we can do a museum in Manipur too. Recently, about 5-6 members of the assembly from your part of the world came to the museum. We had a visit from a delegation of members of legislative assembly from Manipur.
Okay. So I'm from Guwahati actually. So so I also have done one project on fishing community in Assam. It was basically based on fishing community only, the situation, how their livelihood and how they're spiritually connected with the river Brahmaputra. Like they means the community were migrated from Bangladesh actually. So how the boat, history, like how the designs of the boats have been changed from history to till now. That was my, focused. Like.
Yeah. Well, I'm very interested in this subject, and I'm actually also working on a lot of documentation. For example, the designs of the boats along the coast of India. Not only along the coast of India, I'm actually, as I said, I'm an ocean artist, and I would like to do a project which is called the Indian Ocean Project, where I study the boat building and ocean literature connected with ocean along all the coast of Indian Ocean. I mean, basically the important ones historically, because you go to Aden, you go to Oman, and you go to the Persian Gulf, you go to the Red Sea, and you go to the coast of Australia, and you go to Maldives. And so I think this can be, and also the Indian coast itself is so large. And so how the designs of the boats change is very interesting study. I'll be most happy if you come to Goa to have a look at what I have been doing, even documenting the songs of the fishermen. When the fishermen push the boat, they sing a song which is called Hamla. That is a local word for it. And they say the boat is sleeping. Unless you touch your backside to the boat and start singing, the boat doesn't wake up. So first you have to wake up the boat and then push her. So there are beautiful things which the fishing community sort of shares with you. And by the way, a lot of the workers in the fishing industry in Goa are from Bangladesh and from Bengal. Yeah, the fishermen installation which you saw, all of them were from Bengal, because a lot of Bengali workers, because I can't find 100 fishermen free to work with me, because I have to work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening. So I pay them the daily wages. So I hired 100 laborers, and all of them were Bengali laborers. And each Bengali laborer is actually also a fisherman.
You're based in Goa, sir?
I'm based in Goa, yeah. Yeah, you can check out the website, and you can check up my Instagram page. It's called Subodh Kerkar, and it gives you all the details.
Okay, sir.
You can check out Museum of Goa and also Subodh Kerkar.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Dr. Cherian did ask me, he asked me, what do you think the ocean has a soul?
He's sitting in beach side.
Yes. Where do you think the soul of the ocean rests? Do ocean have a heart? I would say that when you look at the ocean, I mean, the whole ocean rests inside you. And especially if you're in love, then it rests in the eyes of your beloved. Thank you very much for inviting me. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and looking forward to do something in Kerala soon.
Sure. Thank you, Subodh Kerkar, as well as all the participants who attended the Zoom meeting, and also all the people who are watching through in Facebook. We will be updating this in YouTube soon. So thank you very much. See you next time with our next program. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Pradeep. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.